The 7 o'clock city council meeting to order, and thank you for your patience. We had a little technical difficulty, but we are good. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, and let the roll reflect all council members are present and a quorum has been established. Council members, are there any corrections to the meeting from April 18th? Seeing none, they are approved. Public comments. At this time, we have options for public comments to be mailed in. They have been acknowledged and received. If you wish to speak to us, the council, you may go to the podium, state your name and address, and anyone on Zoom, if you would like to speak to us at that time, I will allow that to happen as well. If you'd like to speak in the chambers, you may step to the podium now, and we will welcome you.
I'm sorry, Mayor, my hearing aids aren't working, so basically, good morning, good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'd like,
Dean, one thing, please. Could you state your name and your address?
Ralphie Bree.
Dean? Dean, could you state your name and address?
Dean W. Marcus at 436 Tiffany Drive, Hastings, Minnesota. Oh, thank you.
There you go. Welcome, Dean.
Okay, but I'm here tonight to address Soldiers and Sailors Cemetery. It basically has no ownership. Nobody owns it. The city of Hastings Parks and Rec is taking care of it, okay? And I say thank you for it, but it needs some improvement. There's 7 graves out there of Civil War veterans. They're soldiers. They need to be honored and respected and taken care of. I had experience out there when before my cease and desist order came out. Eagle flew over the cemetery, which probably isn't unusual going over to Mississippi. And then an individual walked into the cemetery and stood by a tombstone for about 15 minutes. That's the first time I've ever seen anybody in Soldiers and Sailors Cemetery looking at a tombstone. It was a soldier and a mother and a wife. So basically, I went through a lot of work, went all the way up to the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota to find out what can be done. He told me 3 actions. Number 1, take the city and county to court. Well, we don't want to do that. Go public. Get a petition to get the city council and the county to take action. Right now, Tom Novak, the county treasurer, is looking at it. Chris Jenkins has all the evidence, and I know you'll make the right decision to honor our soldiers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And Dean, thank you for everything you do for our community and the veterans of it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I just said thank you for all you do
Welcome.
in our community for our veterans.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to wish to speak at the council at this time? Anyone on Zoom? And no one on Zoom. Okay. Council items, are there any council items to be considered? Okay. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Liefeld. That motion prevails. Tonight, we have a public hearing for a sidewalk I'm sorry, I moved too swiftly. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. And that, now the motion prevails. Tonight, we have a public hearing for a sidewalk cafe application for Hastings Tavern and the Hastings Dairy Store. For this item, we will have an introduction by Assistant City Administrator Kelly Murtaugh, followed by a public hearing and a potential action of the council. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, City Council members, this evening, you have in front of you the opportunity for a public hearing and then a consideration of a sidewalk cafe for the Hastings Dairy Store, as well as a sidewalk cafe with a liquor license amendment for the Hastings Social Tavern. So this is, let's see here, let's make this just a little smaller. This is the drawing around what used to be, so this would be across from the current dairy store. They're going to be moving across here. This is existing. There'll be seating out here, and then they're adding some new proposed concrete along the 17th Street area. So this is the space here. They've got seating for, I believe, 16 folks, one of those being an ADA accessible seating for that particular area. And then I'll switch to the others for the Hastings Social Tavern. I'll give you two views. So this would be on the south side with the entrance right here. And then there would be a wall partitioning that off from passersby for the Sidewalk Cafe. And this has the liquor license amendment to it. There would be no outside entertainment. Would just be seating, and then liquor would be served in that area. Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions, or we can certainly entertain the public hearing at this time.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone to wish to speak to this in the audience. Anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak to this? No one on Zoom. One more call. Anyone wish to speak to the sidewalk cafes for Hastings Tavern and Hastings Dairy Store? Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing. Open discussion for council. Council discussion. Councilmember Brox.
Thank you. I have a question about the placement is on this side. I recall that when it was Breakaway Arts Cafe, there was some right-of-way concerns on the other side of the building. Is that why this is located here? And there's none of those concerns on this side of the building, correct?
Correct. On this side of the building, this is city property, and so there are no concerns on this side of the building. The other side of the building, there's the right-of-way with the state, with MnDOT, and there have been conversations with MnDOT. It may be entertained in the future, but at this time, they weren't open for conversation on allowing that to happen on the west side.
Is there anything that we can do to further some of those conversations? I just know this has been an issue for several years now and will continue to be an issue unless something changes. So is there something that we can do to help that change?
Councilmember, I think it's actually perhaps timing. They had approved it several years ago and were open to it, and the feedback that we got wasn't that they weren't open to it, but perhaps just not right now. And I think I truly believe it's timing. So I think if their question were to come for them in the future, it might be entertained again.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Kelly, I'd like to follow up with that because if they do get the approval through the state, do they have to come back? Do we have to do another public hearing because the location is different than what they're proposed today? And if so, I think we could, Councilmember Brox, make a statement that in that proposal is when they do get that approval, don't make them come back in front of us. Let's just, if it came from a body from our body saying we think it's important that it can go on the other side, I think that sends a message to the state of Minnesota that they should get that right away. But I don't know, maybe our attorney would have to answer that.
Would you like to speak to it?
Your Honor, members of the council, I'm not familiar enough with this application or with what's been done in the past to even offer an opinion, so I apologize that I can't just go on the fly on this, but I'm not comfortable just opining without seeing exactly what the request is or what approval would be required from the state first.
Thank you, Counselor. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. When Mecca Page had it, I do remember that I thought it was going to be smooth sailing, and then unfortunately she lost the breakaway arts. And then the new owner came in after Mecca, and I had asked her if she was aware of the conversations, and she wasn't aware of the conversations. I was really surprised. She didn't know that MnDOT had pretty much agreed to it. And I'm not sure she had the bandwidth to take it on or not. And since then, they've had another change in ownership, right? And so I don't know. It seems like we've had so much turnover, and I wonder if they've had turnover in staff as well. It would be really nice if we could get something memorialized in writing that, from them to be able to move forward. And MnDOT's been such a good partner with the Highway 316 and now the Highway 61. If there's any way that we can dovetail that discussion into, particularly since we're going to be having all the stakeholder meetings, aren't we? When is the meeting for the open house? I think it's May 18th or something like that, right? I gotta write that down. It would be a good thing maybe to bring up now sooner than later, because I'm just not sure if the property owners realize the extent of all the conversations that were had in the past. And we have a new city administrator, we have a new you. And so it would be really nice if we could put that on our list of things to get done
Certainly.
in the next.
We can look at prior documentation. I think the earlier documentation, if I remember seeing it, it was approved for a period of time. It was a defined period of time, but it was approved for a period of time, which has since expired. So I think that, I think that they were willing to have the conversation, but I think that it was a matter of timing for this.
Okay.
Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Brox.
Your Honor, I'm wondering if it'd be possible just to give two separate approvals for these two entities separately, so that if later we got approval, it would be easier to kind of amend one. I don't know if that makes it easier. I guess I'll look to Attorney Land, but maybe we could separate our acceptance of the motion into two motions for each entity, and then if we could come back later and amend if we need to, if we get approval from MnDOT.
As you saw, Counselor shaking her head, that would work.
All right.
Councilmember Fulch, your light's on. Okay.
Is it? I can't see.
All right, at this time, then I would accept a motion to approve the Sidewalk Cafe for Hastings Dairy Store. And,
That's it.
okay,
I'll move that.
okay, thank you. Additional discussion, council. Okay, in favor of that motion of the Dairy Store Sidewalk Cafe, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Councilmember Brax, do you want to continue?
I'll just motion for the approval of the Sidewalk Cafe with liquor license amendment for Hastings Social LLC, Hastings Tavern.
And a second by Councilmember Lund. Additional discussion, council. Okay, all those in favor of the motion state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you. We have a resolution also for the insurance and sale of the Geo Bonds Series 2022A. And welcome Jessica from Northland Securities.
There we go. The draft resolution that was included in your packet last week has been updated with the final numbers based on the results of the bids today. Also included in your packet is a sale summary for your consideration, and then we also have included the rating report that goes along with the bonds. If it's okay with Mayor and Council, I'll plan to just go through that sales summary and then answer any questions that you might have. So on page 2 of the sales summary, you've got some high-level detail related to the transaction. Purpose here being that we will be financing the 2022 street improvement and utility projects, which includes the water tower reconditioning project, and then also financing the new public works storage facility. The bonds were also sized to include the cost of issuance associated with the bonds. In terms of the structure, looking at a 10-year structure, which is typical of the city does amortize their debt rather quickly. And then for security, looking at special assessments, net revenues of the city's water and sewer utility, and then also ad valorem taxes. The method of sale here was a public sale, so we took bids on behalf of the city this morning at 10 a.m., and 7 bids were received. R.W. Baird out of Milwaukee was the low bidder. The bonds were assigned a rating of AA with a stable outlook by Standard & Poor's. So this is the same rating that the city has received the past many years. I won't go through that entire report with you. The city continues to receive very strong marks in terms of financial management, very strong liquidity and budgetary performance. But generally speaking, that report looks very similar to the reports that we've seen the last many years. That being said, if council does want to dive into that report, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to do that. Final maturity on the bonds will be February 1 of 2033, and then there's an optional call for the city beginning February 1 of 2030. The par amount here is $5,815,000. And a note here on the final par amount. So when the finance plan was delivered to council about a month ago, we were looking at roughly 6.8 million. So a couple of things have happened since then. So the bids for the individual projects came in lower than what was originally estimated. And then we also saw some premium on the bonds, which I'll touch on in just a moment. The all-inclusive cost here is 3.04, and then the true interest cost came in at 2.86. Council may recall that when the finance plan was reviewed about a month ago, we were looking at an estimated true interest cost of 2.72. That's up about 14 basis points. But given the volatility that we've seen in the market over the past many months and even over the past several weeks, we are very happy with that result today. The bid tab can be found on page 3, so this provides details related to all of the bids received. So you can see that R.W. Baird was the low bidder here, and they bid alongside a rather large syndicate, so a number of different underwriters likely getting a piece of the bonds. The sources and uses can be found on page 4. So the individual portions are broken out here. So the street improvement portion along with the water and sewer portion related to the street improvement, the water tower reconditioning project, and then the CIP portion is the construction of that new public works storage facility. You'll see that the city is planning to contribute $600,000 for that public works facility. And then here's the reoffering premium, that $436,752.25. Now, council is likely familiar with the term premium, being that we have seen premium on the past many issues for the city. But what that means is that investors are looking for a higher interest rate on the bonds or the coupon on the bonds, and they're willing to give you cash up front to do that. So when that happens, we downsize the bonds, so you're paying less in principal and you're paying a little bit more in interest. So we take that again and we downsize the bonds, which is why we're arriving at that $5,815,000. The comparison between the coupon and the yield can be found in the pricing summary in the middle of the page. So the third column from the left provides the interest rate information. So you can see out through 2030, which is the call date on the bonds, that we're looking at a 5% coupon and then 3% thereafter. The yield is found in that fourth column, so that's after figuring in that premium amount that was received, that cash. On the next page, you'll see the combined debt service schedule. So again, relatively level principal and interest throughout, right around $715,000. The levy schedules are found on page 6, so you'll see for the improvement portion, after deducting those planned assessment revenues, looking at roughly $230,000 on an annual basis, and then the CIP portion for the public works facility coming in right around $126,000. On page 7, what you'll see is just the local issuance, so these are the other Minnesota issues that are pricing this week. And then finally, you've got a couple of graphs here. Page 8 shows the past 5-year snapshots. You can see in that very dark line for 2022, just the amount of volatility that we've seen this year, which is quite significant. And then a longer-term snapshot around 22 years on that final graph. And we include that just to show that even though we are seeing those rates increasing quite a bit, we still are, relatively speaking, in a rather low interest rate environment when we compare that to the historical rate trends. With that, I will conclude my comments, but I am happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Jessica. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jessica, thank you. This might not be for you, it might be for staff. But when you met, we had a number, and then once we went out and got quotes, we lowered the amount that we're borrowing. What if we run into, I know we put contingency funding in there, but what if we find a change order that's gonna go way above what we borrowed? Can we come back to get the funding for the difference of the findings? Let's say the water towers needs more help, or we come back to our city retained?
Sure. If you were looking to finance additional costs, you would then need to issue a separate bond issue for that. I will say, related to the Public Works facility, the city had talked about using maybe up to $1 million or so for that project, and instead we're looking at roughly 600. So there may be some cash that may be available there. The other thing that you could consider doing is if you wanted to wait, being that the city does issue on a regular basis pretty much every year, you could essentially do a reimbursement resolution and then add that onto your next bond issue.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other questions, council? Okay, then I would look for a motion approving a resolution providing for issuance for sale the general obligation bonds, Series 2022A, pledging for the security thereof, special assessments and net revenues, and levying a tax for the payment therefore.
So moved, Your Honor.
Okay, Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Vaughn. Additional new discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. Thank you, and that motion prevails. Thank you, Jessica. Tonight, under Community Development, we will have with us tonight Justin Fortney. Welcome, Justin.
As commercial. The site was guided as commercial in the comprehensive plan previously for the purposes of possible expansion of the Las Margaritas restaurant. With their expansion to the south several years ago, that additional property was not needed for their commercial site. They're proposing to redevelop this site with a duplex in place of the home that was recently demolished. This is a map showing the future land use of the site as commercial, surrounded to the south and west of medium-density residential, which is what's being proposed for the change to the comprehensive plan. And the zoning on the right side of the screen is showing the site being zoned commercial, adjacent to other properties that are a little bit larger, that are zoned R3, that are developed with 4-unit buildings. They're like 4-unit apartment buildings. The Vermilion Street corridor plan doesn't identify this site as a redevelopment site, and the corridor plan in this area guides for use of properties as single-family and multifamily in that, along that corridor. So this proposal is in line with that plan. This is a picture of the former house that was demolished. The site is pretty cleared now for development. And I've got a couple pictures just looking down the street with the arrow pointing to the subject location. behind Las Margaritas. And this is looking to the east. You can see some of those 4-unit apartment buildings that are adjacent to this site, which are on a little bit larger lots. The notice was mailed to property owners within 350 feet of the site and published in the newspaper for a public hearing that was held at the Planning Commission meeting on April 11th, where no comments had been received by staff and no comments were provided at that public hearing meeting. The Planning Commission did recommend unanimously that the council approve both of these actions. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Council, any questions? If not, I would accept a motion approving a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hastings amending the City of Hastings 2040 Comprehensive Plan and approving the second reading and adoption of an ordinance of the City of Hastings, Minnesota, amending Section 155.01 zoning code of the city code having to do with official zoning map. Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Fulch. Additional new discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you, Justin. Tonight, under administration, we have the appointment of a police chief. Dan Waticha will be giving an introduction to that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last fall, when Chief Schaefer said he was going to be retiring, we had several discussions for certain, and really just appreciating that the department has been well-trained and professional under Chief Schaefer and his command staff. We've really instituted a culture of service, community engagement, and based off of that, felt that it was right to look at an internal promotion. We have several capable people that could step in the chief's role, and really wanted to maintain and build on that foundation of service and engagement and professionalism. So come this spring, as we got closer to Chief's retirement, we opened it up for internal applicants. We conducted 3 panel interviews, one with representatives within the department itself, patrol officers, supervisory staff among the sergeants, records staff, and we also brought in somebody from the Dakota County Sheriff's Department. So real strong on that law enforcement and internal to the department perspective. We had an interview panel of other department heads, the fire chief, the public works director, for example. Maybe not exactly the same position, but peer-level positions that understand how we work collaboratively across our departments, how this position works with me and with the city council. So that was the second interview panel. And the third one, I think was really important, but we brought in a number of community partners, and they just really brought some vital perspective on key issues. Dakota County Social Services, they're the ones that handle the crisis response and mental health calls. They're the ones that we've been working with and are increasing our embedded social worker with the department. 360 communities, which works with vulnerable populations, particularly around domestic abuse. IDEA, with their emphasis on equity and inclusion. Ally Services, who helps work with making sure that our homeless population has services. And Hastings Ministerial, which has an engagement within the community, and most importantly here, has been on some of the initial conversations we've had and we've built from on mental health within the department itself and making sure that our officers are cared for too. So some real vital perspectives that we had from the community. Applicants had one-on-one interviews with me, enjoyable couple hours. We finished up with an interview with the Public Safety Committee of Council, who was council members Liefeld, Brox, and Lund. And we also brought in for that interview 3 representatives of PSAC, the Public Safety Advisory Commission. Dolores Pimble, Brian Ashman, and Teresa Auger. So again, some additional community perspective there. Coming out of those, we jointly recommended unanimously promoting Dave Wilski to police chief effective May 30th after Chief Schaefer's retirement. Dave has been deputy chief for 5 years, since 2017. Prior to that, he was with the University of Minnesota Police Department for 20 years. What really stood out throughout the interviews with Deputy Chief Wilski were he just embodies that culture of service and that community engagement that we want to make sure continues here at Hastings Police Department. And knowing that he's been integral in establishing that culture over the last 5 years that he's been here. So really looking forward to the recommendation to council to name Dave Wilski as police chief. I can certainly take questions. Public Safety Committee members can take questions. Dave's here if you want to give him one last interview. But with that, very pleased with this recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Council discussion. Okay. Then, council, I would accept a motion of appointing Dave Wilski as our new Hastings Police Chief effective May 30th.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld, and a second by Councilmember Brox. Additional discussion, council. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to be the first to congratulate as we're moving forward, but I also would like to acknowledge that we did have 2 really excellent candidates internally, and we still win. I mean, with both candidates, and so thank you both for your dedication and service to our community. And Chief, we're going to really miss you a great deal, and so thank you for bringing in such great personnel behind you, so that it makes the transition that much easier. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. I'll say the same thing along with Councilmember Fulch. Thank you to all of the panels that helped interview both, or the people that were accepted as thank you as candidates. And it's kind of emotional because I was here with the chief at the beginning, and we hate to see you go, but thank you for all that you have done to our PD department and our community. You've done a ton, and you should be commended for the steps you've put in place. For our future chief, who we welcome, thank you all. This time, I will take a vote of accepting Police Chief Dave Wilski. All those in favor of that motion state by saying aye. 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 Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. That motion prevails. Welcome, Chief. More to come, right? You're swearing in. There you go. Okay, under Community Investment Fund for this item, we will have Dan continue.
Yeah, I got the fun topics tonight.
Yeah.
The Community Investment Fund is a new program this year. The council budgeted $100,000 for it. And at the start, the emphasis has been on wanting good partnerships with organizations in the community. How can the city work with community organizations at identifying priorities and working together to fund and see some projects move forward. We had 10 applications. 6 were recommended for funding in the areas of business and tourism, history, and athletics. So I think pleased at the variety of projects we received. We had 2 other projects that we're shepherding through alternate funding sources. Because there are other funding sources, they're not on the list tonight, but do want to recognize those. And then we also did have 2 that were beyond the scale of what we had here in our budget, but they helped open some conversation and may have potential funding through the budget process in the coming year or in a few years. With that, the 6 projects recommended for funding with the Downtown Business Association, the DBA, $19,000 and change for new winter decorations in the downtown area. With the Building Remembrance for Reconciliation, $10,000 to complete a charrette process, identifying a future art project and future installation in recognition of the Brown's Chapel and that significance in Hastings history. $30,000 and change to the Hastings Hockey Association to replace the scoreboards in the East Rink and also the arena sound system. $9,900, roughly $10,000 to Dakota County Historic Society, specifically the Leduc Mansion for a new gardening shed, fencing and signage. $17,000 and change with the Hastings Youth Athletic Association and the Hastings Hawks for batting cages and bullpen improvements, and $10,000 for new soccer goals with the Hastings Football Club. So some great projects and partnerships. If these were all recommended by the Finance Committee, if council members Vaughn, Fulch, or Fox have other comments about these or the process, since it's new, you can certainly turn it to them, or any questions you might have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Dan, thanks for the recognizing who they are, but I think the community needs to know that all these people brought some matching funds to go with that. So the dollars that Dan mentioned was city funds. But I think a great conversation on some awareness of some other areas that we need to address in the community. We'll get there, but I think as a chair, I'm going to recommend that this program continues. So I think we'll see this. I think the community should know this, that this really worked well, in my opinion. We got great response and we got a great variety. So I will try to bring it forward in the budget for next year to do this program again. If we can make it bigger and better, I think we should, because I think the community really embraced it, and you can see with the projects, we're going to get some cool things done for the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I agree. I think it really exceeded my expectations. You know, the matching element was important, I think, to me at least. And if you look, what did we say, $97,000 in funding, and then $95,000 in matching. It's almost, 50-50. These are things that may not have otherwise happened had there not been this impetus, this something to raise money for as a matching fund, right? So having this as an opportunity allows community groups to rally behind something and say, hey, we need to find matching funds, and they have fundraisers, and then they have something to go for. So you get the point. But I guess what I'm saying is that, that's a great takeaway from this. But then also the other ones, the 2 other projects that maybe wouldn't have come to light this year or at all, or they didn't know where to go to find funding. So without this opportunity, we may not have had those conversations and said, well, actually, you can get funding through this avenue or that avenue. There's 2 more projects that the city gets to benefit from just because of this, and it's not even coming out of the money of this. And then, like Dan mentioned, the others that are maybe beyond the scope, but something that is of value to look at later. So I applaud this, and I think it's great, and hopefully the community can continue to support this, because I think it's the right direction.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have to say that I've been extremely pleased with how this has actually matured over the last couple of years. And it all really actually started with the hockey associations coming forward about 3 years ago and being interested in wanting to work with the city and helping to provide some match. And Councilmember Vaughn had a really great suggestion in building this fund, and so thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Right, yeah, no kidding, fella next to me on my left. And so, so it is really exciting, and I wish we would have had in here the spreadsheet, the financial spreadsheet that we looked at in the Finance Committee, because then you could see that it was actually almost dollar for dollar in match. And that was really, I think, super important that the city kind of doubled its money, that we brought in that much more. And then last, there were a couple of projects that were brought forward that, aren't being funded, and the pickleball project in particular, we thought that had a lot of merit, and I don't think that we really talked about this one a lot, but I just wanted to give recognition that the Tennis Association has been talking about wanting to do something with the courts at Roadside for quite some time. And now the pickleball group has come forward, and they're also wanting to do something there. And in our conversation, the thing that we had talked about was trying to continue having that conversation with those groups. And so the Parks Director, Chris Jenkins, will be reaching out to those associations to begin conversations and bring them together so that we can have some collaboration and see what can be done moving forward, because it is a big ticket item. At, what was it again? At least $160,000 worth of, repair that we were looking at, and so it was a big ticket item. The last item that was on there that we tabled just for right now, it was, help me again, that was a park improvements to, what was that? The Homeowners Association for, it was, I forget the name of the. Grayton Park, there we go. And that wasn't on our radar screen at all. And so that was nice to hear from that neighborhood and have them reach out, and that they had a lot of concerns that they would like to see improvements there. And so the Parks Director, Chris Jenkins, is also aware of that, and we'll be bringing that back to the Parks and Rec Commission for further conversation and figuring out which of the pocket parks that we could look at possibly renovating in the upcoming 5-year plan. So that was where that one got left. So I think, did we cover it all then? Yep, okay, all right, thanks, just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Brox.
I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Fulch said about Councilmember Vaughn. I think this was your idea, because I've heard you talk about it for many years, and so I just wanted to give you credit. And also all the organizations that came forward, I was really happy with the diversity of options that weren't all one kind of thing. The organizations that presented projects to us were arts and tourism and sports, and I'm very pleased to see that diversity in this list and support it. I did want to say that I am going to vote on this. My son is a soccer player, and he is in the Hastings Football Club, but he's a goalie. And I don't think that this particular vote is going to benefit him specifically in any sort of way. So I will not be abstaining. I will be voting on this, and I just wanted to say that out loud so everybody knew why.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. I just want to make a statement that staff made it important that when we started this program that this was the first year, and I think the community needs to tell us more. Should it do more than just matching projects, and could it be events? Could it be something more that they say, you know what, Because my goal is maybe somebody wants to donate money to this community investment fund so we can grow this. 100,000 is a pretty small project, if you ask me. I want to grow this to be, that if we need a new fire station someday, something that this thing can grow to help pay for things. And that's why I want to bring awareness to the community that this is just small projects that, as Councilor Foltz said, came to light by this. But there's more out there that this community can do together, and this could be the fund that kind of brings the source to be the consistent to keep this going forward. So I hope it's not a one-year thing. I hope this goes on for years to come. And I hope the community starts to let us know. It doesn't have to be, hey, we got some money to do this. Just call City Hall, call one of us, and tell us, I think that community investment fund should do this. And then we can start to bring it back to the process for next year. So with that, Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay, great. Additional discussion, council? Councilmember Fox, did you want to say something?
Just a little additional discussion. I think this is about partnerships, and what we've seen is just the beginning, is all I wanted to say. So,
Okay.
Mark,
Thank
you summed it up
Councilmember
very well.
Fox. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you all. You may, yep. He wants to say thank you. He just wants to say thank you.
My name is Andy Binman. I live at 19650 Owen Avenue in Hastings. I want to thank Mayor Fassbender, the city council members, Administrator Waticha for this grant. And we want to thank you, I didn't say, I'm Andy Binman. I did say Andy Binman, I didn't say I'm Chair of Building Remembrance for Reconciliation, which we call BR4R because the other is a mouthful. And so as chair, I'm here to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the grant from the Community Investment Fund. We see this as a strong vote of confidence as BR4R moves to develop ideas for how we can honor Hastings' original Black residents and their original church, Brown's Chapel. I also wanted to thank Chris Jenkins, who was very helpful in helping us prepare our application, and he very beyond the what he needed to do. So thank you to him too. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we will make you proud.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Binman. Council members, do you have any announcements? No? I have a few. May is National Building Safety Month and National Historic Preservation Month. This is a Municipal Clerk Appreciation Week. And please join me in great and heartfelt thank you to all of the employees in these departments for their services for our community. On Saturday, May 7th, the Hastings Prescott Bike Tour showcases 2 unique bike trails that offer stunning river views, historic downtowns, bird watching, and more. Plan a DIY parks and trails cleanup to keep Hastings clean, safe, and beautiful. Contact Paige at Parks and Rec to volunteer and pick up cleanup supplies. United Way of Hastings continues hosting a series on fentanyl awareness on May 3rd, tomorrow night, and Tuesday, May 10th. Information can be found at the Hastings United Way website. Tuesday, May 3rd, 7 a.m., that's tomorrow morning, Operations Committee meets. Monday, May 9th, 7 p.m., Planning Commission. Wednesday, May 11th, 6 p.m., Arts Task Force. Thursday, May 12th, 6 p.m. is HEDRA. Monday, May 16th, 5:30, City Council has a workshop on the high performance leadership. And 7 p.m., City Council regular meeting. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Leifelt. No discussion. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. And anyone who doesn't want that motion state by saying nay.